Greetings, this is Mr. Nobody, the MAGA Republican, making America great again. I wish here simply to summarize in a swift manner the previous 10 episodes. It's kind of long. Some of it's a bit repetitive. I apologize for that. Some of it I sometimes kind of go off on different tangents. And of course, I also present an awful lot of evidences at length. But in summary, what happened was the efforts that were being done to try to prevent President Trump from being able to continue as president. So, partisan acts by supposed to be very nonpartisan actors that were in fact acting in a highly partisan manner. News agencies, for example, that didn't worry about verifying a story about all the Russia hoax. They went on and on. Oh, investigation, blah, blah, blah. They went on from even before his election and throughout the first several years of his presidency, all on something that had nothing. They didn't have to verify it. He's orange. That's enough. You see? And yet, when it came to the Biden laptop, oh, that's not a verified story. And we're going to go to every possible effort to make sure that every trace of it disappears from the internet. No one can tell anybody about it, supply anybody else a link to it, or anything whatsoever, or even allow any copy of it to stay online anywhere. And even physical copies are going to be removed from every library across the country and anywhere else we can remove them. All of which they did. Because they didn't want that New York Post article to get out and become known, at least not till after the election. So, and the whole justification, well, we haven't verified this. Well, they sure were not concerned about verifying the other one, were they? So, it's not journalism, it's just muckraking, pure and simple. And anyway, so a lot of the stuff is what had gone on before. That, too, is as much a part of the fraud as anything else, the propaganda that led up to it all. But then we get down to the actual thing itself. There was the numerous kinds of fraud that were done at the time. And I spent several of those episodes going over in detail, itemizing a number of different ways and different notes that I've made regarding particular instances of fraud that were known, that were circulated, and then just disappeared, and you can't find them anywhere. They were what I call the evidence that vanished. And then the next level is another group of evidence that got presented where it couldn't be made to disappear, maybe from the floor of the halls of Congress. And really, all the big distraction about January 6th, and they always show all these crowds and so forth, distracts people from the far more important things going on among the representatives and senators themselves for that day. And I described those actions. One of the things they did do was they broke into separate chambers for the House and the senators, and they did this on 2 separate states. They should have done it on 6 states. But they did it, they actually managed to do it on 2, and even with that, they managed to bring forth a fair amount of stuff from the floor. This was evidence from the floor. This is evidence that remains in the congressional record, where destroying it or making it go away is going to involve a level of effort that, at least so far, they haven't yet stooped to doing. So, that, at least in the moment I'm making these things, and so far as I know, remains. And I go through all of that, or at least a great deal of it. Some of it starts getting repetitive, but I try to cover all the main different points and leave out the redundant speakers, because there's a number of those as we go along. so that you get a lot of these little short 5-minute speeches from various representatives and some senators about what was going on. That is a matter of permanent record in the records of Congress. That at least in one place where these evidences are listed, documented, discussed, cited, and in some cases even documented and evidenced as proof that many things were done to sabotage the reliability of the election, to do anything they can to make sure that Trump doesn't win no matter what the American voters do. So, but the other thing was, what was the real disaster? What was the real purpose of the thing? The purpose of the thing was to attack Trump. Trump was himself the main victim of that invasion. He was not a perpetrator. He had nothing to do with it. One might as well accuse some girl who gets raped of being the perpetrator of what happened to her. And sometimes people have done that very thing. And this is doing that very thing. Trump does not play the victim card. That's not his way. But he was, in fact, a victim of an extremely bold sabotage of the one last recourse that our Constitution gives for example, a president such as himself who has been wronged by a process seized by partisan bad actors. This was the one last recourse. Now they try to claim it's all just a ceremonial. You just read the things. The state did this. How many times? Who are the electors? That's it. And you just count them, and that's it. Oh yeah, I find it. And even Pence is maintaining this position. And here's something we need to make sure people understand. Pence himself was repeatedly citing the particular acts of the code in the law of Article 3, Sections 15 and 17. He says them over and over again that tell you that there can be objections expressed to these slates of electors. And in order for these objections to be entertained, they have to be written, they have to be in writing, and they have to be signed by at least one representative and at least one senator. And when this all happens, then they break out then the Congress, which is in a joint session, breaks out into separate sessions between House and Senate, and they spend 2 hours debating about these things, and then coming back together and deciding what they're going to do about the situation that is brought up as a result of the objection and what information came out in the course of the debate. That's what's supposed to do. These are all procedures. This is all there in the law. And he cited that law over and over and over again, either because they complied with it or, as we saw, the real object of the invasion was to stop that evidence from going on the floor. They couldn't stop it when we had Arizona, when they broke for the state of Arizona. But they could stop them from doing it for Georgia. They could stop it for doing Michigan. They could stop it for doing Nevada. They could stop it for doing Wisconsin. And only one other state, Pennsylvania, were they able to do this. And even then, the senators just threw the time away. They just threw it away. The representatives at least used it, but most of them were pretty repetitive, though there's a few things, and I covered all that as well. And the object of all of this was to make it so they won't use that for what it was meant to do. If there hadn't been the interruption, they would have done that for each of the 6 states. But what happened, the invaders came in, having got in, and they were let in because the guards were ordered to let them in. They were ordered to unlock the doors. They were ordered to wave, "Come on in, crowd, come on in." They even gave them tours and so forth of where to go and so forth. They didn't stop them. They led them around. First, they led them straight to the Senate chamber to most of all intimidate the senators. Why? Because it's a much smaller chamber, and there was about a dozen or so senators willing to stand up and be counted for this country. And then, after being intimidated, you only had a couple. The rest were scared. They chickened out, even as they made a song and dance about, "Oh, we're bravely carrying on." That is not what they did. They chickened out. They refused to do their constitutionally appointed job, which was to really consider these objections and perhaps even do something about it, such as accept and recognize the alternate slates of electors that each of these 6 states had sent to Washington. So that's what they could have done and should have done in all justice. But all of that was prevented because there was this invasion. And they were scared. And they were lazy, too. And they made, the one lady who first did this in Georgia, a senator from Georgia, newly elected, was saying, "Well, I was going to object, but after all this, I've changed my mind." She makes a song and dance about conscience. That's an out-and-out lie. It's about cowardice because she's chickening out, and it's about convenience because it's been a long day, and they just want to just do this thing. I'll call it a day, go home. And as one of the representatives put it, just eat your tea and crumpets and watch this country swirl down the toilet drain or something like that. And that's exactly what she did, and that became a pattern for all those other states except Pennsylvania. And by that time, it was too little, too late, and nothing useful was going to get done. The senators totally wasted that period of time, and the representatives got kind of repetitive when they could have been bringing out a whole lot more stuff. And then that was it. And nothing came of it. Not a single alternate slate of electors was chosen for even one state, where they should have, in all justice, been chosen for all 6 states. So that was the effect of it. That was what they maneuvered. That was why they created that. The invasion was engineered, and it was engineered by Nancy Pelosi, by Chuck Schumer, by the mayor of Washington, D.C., and by probably some general or two, or several, I don't know, in the Pentagon, and also various groups like the FBI and various other alphabet soup agencies that remain nameless, that literally conspired to do a partisan act. And I documented all of that. That, in a nutshell, was what the whole thing's all about. If you want to go through it all, it'll be long and make it a little tedious, but there's a lot of evidences to present. And if not, this is my summary. Thanks for listening.